catch up on American politics now. Donald Trump tweeted about the Russia investigation no less than 8 times this weekend, culminating in an order to the Justice Department to investigate whether his presidential campaign was spied on by the FBI. Historians say the US hasn't seen this kind of behaviour since Richard Nixon during the Watergate investigation.
So let's remind you how we got here. On Wednesday, the Republican head of the Senate Intelligence Committee agreed with the assessment of the intelligence agencies that the Kremlin did interfere in the election to help Donald Trump. On Friday, the Washington Post reported that an FBI informant met with 3 advisors to the Trump campaign during the 2016 presidential election.
By yesterday, Mr. Trump was tweeting this: "I hereby demand, and will do so officially tomorrow, that the Department of Justice look into whether or not the FBI DOJ infiltrated or surveilled the Trump campaign for political purposes, and if any such demands or requests were made by people within the Obama administration." Exclamation mark. Let's pick this up with our North America editor, John Sopel, who joins us now. How unusual is this, John?
Very unusual, because in America, the simple kind of rules of the Constitution are you have 3 separate co-equal branches, and the judiciary is separate from the executive. And what Donald Trump has done with this tweet is try to order the Department of Justice about what it should be investigating. Now, what's unclear to me about this edict, if you like, and let's remember it is an edict on Twitter which hasn't yet turned into an edict in reality, but I don't know whether this is to kind of clear the air or muddy the water of the Mueller investigation by doing this. Now, what I can tell you, Cathy, is that the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, and the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, are going to the White House in the next 45 minutes or so to have a meeting with the President about this demand. It'll be interesting to see if both men are left standing at the end of it.
John, I don't know if it's just because I've come back from covering the royal wedding, but that language, "I hereby demand," strikes me as almost kind of regal in its tone. We keep wondering whether we are getting to a turning point in the Russia investigation or to a breaking point constitutionally in this investigation. And I've heard historians saying today that, yeah, this sort of marks that point. What do you think?
Well, we keep on reporting that Donald Trump has gone up very close to the line of where his power ends and where kind of despotic leadership begins. And I think that if this tweet that came out yesterday, and "I hereby demand," was on Twitter and it hasn't yet been formalised, if that becomes formalised, I think some people would say he is overstepping the mark. I think if he tries to sack Robert Mueller, the special counsel, I think that would be seen as overstepping the mark. At the moment, we're in a grey area, but I do feel that over the past 18 months, what we have deemed to be acceptable has changed and has moved.
What his supporters would point to, though, John, is that there was an academic here in London, reportedly, who was trying to get close to 2 or 3 people within the campaign. Was that appropriate? And who would have signed that off? Was it political?
Well, if it was political to undermine the Trump campaign, of course that is totally unacceptable. If it is investigated by the independent office which is meant to do this, then that is appropriate as well. But just imagine you have a law and order agency whose job is to maintain the security and integrity of elections in the country where they serve, and they felt they had evidence that there was Russian interference, Russian undermining of the election, and they didn't investigate it. Wouldn't that be an enormous story and an abdication of their responsibilities along the line as well? And so it's the way you frame it. If you're saying the FBI were investigating to make sure that the elections were clean and honest, then who could object to that? But if you're framing it in the way that Donald Trump is framing it, which is, were they trying to undermine the Trump campaign, you get a very different answer and very different response from his supporters.
Okay, John and Christian, if I started saying "I hereby demand," would you listen to me and do what I wanted? Because I kind of like that language. I think I'm going to
Not
start
so much.
trying it here on "I hereby demand that you both shush and let me talk." Let's move on.